Okay, so today's topic is digital security and spot fakes, stop fraud. So, digital security is defined as keeping yourself and your personal information safe from different types of digital threat. And we're going to go over the types of digital threat that we're likely to face when we're talking about digital security at this school. So, the big thing to recognize is that, well, I'll go back, I'll step back a bit. Um, this week, the tech department has been kind of on a security kick. So we've been kind of testing our own security within the department, and it happened to correspond with the fact that this month I was going to already talk about some digital security topics. So I decided what better week than this week, and it also helps that Craig was supposed to be here this week, and he instead it will not be here until 2 weeks from now. And he's supposed to cover some topics that are important to Jason. So um, that's going to be another mandatory sort of situation. But this week was already slotted as a mandatory one, so I figured, you know, good time to use to talk about digital security. So when we're talking about digital security, the biggest weak point in any sort of computer system is actually between the chair and the computer. That is you, me, and everybody else. If we're not aware of the different threats that we could possibly run into while we're using the computer, we could fall victim to a number of different attacks. So today I'm going to sort of um, give you guys a brief introduction to a lot of the different stuff that you could face. But first, there is a quiz so that you can test yourself on uh, on the digital security concepts. So I see that there's a couple of you who have your devices. If you want to take it by yourself, then you go right ahead and type in that link right there. Otherwise, the couple of you that don't have it, we can just take a look at the questions and you can sort of answer in your head. Um, which of these passwords is most secure? So we're wager that there's maybe two, three. Is it safe to use a public Wi-Fi for secure information? And then finally, what risk could be minimized by using a VPN? I would wager that there's maybe two, three people in the room who would actually know what a VPN is in this room. So, back to the slideshow here.
So my results are not bad.
So, here's kind of what the bell curve ends up looking like. Most people can answer 3 or 4 questions correctly. You know, on the high end, you know, there's about 1% who can answer every single one of these questions correctly, and it kind of filters down. This was out of 1,055 adults who took part in the national survey conducted by the Pew Research, whatever it's called. Ooh, skipped over my image there. Pew Research Center during June 17th through 27th, 2016. So that was last year during about June. And this is kind of how people answered. A lot of people could get up to like the first 4 questions correct, but then a lot of people didn't know. Like, and that's kind of the surprising part to me was that there were a lot of people who were so not confident that they wouldn't even bother to guess, you know. So that says to me a lot about you know, the state of digital security education. Um, not a lot of people know about the different aspects of digital security. So we're going to go over the types of digital threat that we're likely to face while working here. And you say, well, it's a school. Who would even want to attack a school? Well, think about how much personal information we have on students. Think of how much information that we collect. A school ends up being something of a gold mine for people who are looking to get away with identity fraud, people who are looking to, just go through a whole bunch of personal data. So there is, and my mouse stopped working. It's not just you guys who have that problem. Touchscreen still works. So here's the basic types, and we can kind of split them up into two categories. We've got the computer as the target, and we've got the computer as a tool. And the difference between the two is when you're talking about computer as a target, that's when all the stuff that they want is actually on the computer. Whereas computer as a tool is when they want something that the computer wouldn't store, such as like your username and password. That's not necessarily stored on your computer. So computer as a target is going to be like viruses and malware, ransomware, and denial of service attacks, which we're going to go into in a little more detail as the talk progresses here. And computer as a tool is spam, phishing, and spear phishing. Those are all the types that we're going to talk about today. So first off, very briefly, what is a virus? Now, a lot of people talk about viruses as this all-encompassing term for everything that could go wrong with my computer. I'm having a glitch on my computer, it must be a virus. Well, no, it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of different types of program that could have malicious effects, but they're not all viruses. A virus is specifically, it is a program that perpetuates itself. A computer virus, as defined by Wikipedia, is a type of malicious software program that, when executed, replicates by reproducing itself or infecting other computer programs by modifying them. So in essence, it acts exactly as a biological virus does into a host organism. It will take over a piece of something that exists within the host's body, and it will use the systems that are within that cell to propagate itself and to distribute itself to others. So a virus is a very specific kind of program that replicates itself intentionally. Whereas the next question is, what is malware? And malware is basically any piece of software that is used to disrupt computer or mobile operations, gather sensitive information, gain access to private computer systems, or display unwanted advertising. So that when we're talking about a lot of the stuff that we end up getting, malware is the umbrella term that everything fits under. So, when you get a piece of software that constantly redirects your browser or adds a toolbar that you didn't want, that would be malware. Putting pop under ads under everything. Then the next question is, that was too far. What's a denial of service attack? Now, denial of service attacks or distributed denial of service attacks are basically the physical analog would be having a bunch of people send letters with the intent to fill up somebody's postal box so that they couldn't receive any legitimate mail. It's just sending a bunch of junk mail to one inbox. In the actual computer sense, basically an attacker will take over a series of computers, and then when he sends or she sends the code to those computers, called a botnet, every single one of those computers sends junk messages to a target computer, which would typically be like the web server of some group that they don't like, or that they want to ransom. They want to extort money out of them. So they say, if you don't pay me this money, I'm going to use my botnet and we're going to take down your servers. This typically isn't the kind of thing that happens against educational institutions, but it happens a lot against things that we use. Uh, and in extreme cases, it can happen against things like that'll take down an entire quarter of the internet. That happened in October of 2016. It was called the Mirai botnet, and basically what happened was um, all of those, all of the Internet of Things devices, which are basically like um, baby monitors with webcams that you hook up wirelessly over your modem, um, like little internet powered devices or internet enabled devices. A lot of them didn't have proper security precautions built in, or in some cases, it was devices where they hadn't changed off of the default password, so it was very easy for the hacker to get in there and do whatever they want with it. Uh, so when he, or when they rather, because it was a group of people, when they got all of these different things working in their botnet, they were able to direct them to attack a DNS server in New York. And DNS servers are basically like the post office. So they filled a post office with mail, is basically what they did. And so it wasn't able to accept requests, and it took down a quarter of the internet. So yeah, that is the kind of thing that will happen, and there's no way that we have to prevent it from happening. But occasionally, a denial of service attack will happen to something that we are using, and we will not be able to use it for the day. So that's just something to be aware of more than anything. So then, what's ransomware? Ransomware is a type of computer program, a type of malware that basically takes all of your files and encrypts them and locks them so that you can't use them and you can't access any of the content of your files unless you pay the hacker a ransom. And oftentimes it'll take over your entire screen with something that looks like that. Oop, not that. That. And, it's got some trappings of official government stuff. You've got Department of Homeland Security, you've got Department of Justice, and it says your computer has been locked due to suspicion of illegal content downloading and distribution. And it basically says what kind of, unforgivable porn you have on your computer, according to the ransomware program, which of course is designed to embarrass the person so that they won't consult an IT professional, because they'll think, oh, I don't remember having this, but it is possible that maybe something like that was on my computer or something like that. I didn't do it, but maybe it is. At any rate, it is shaming the victim so that they have no other option than to go out and pay the hacker if they want their files back. And of course, on this one, it says any individual who violates or attempts to violate or conspires to violate mentioned laws will be sentenced to a mandatory term of imprisonment from 4 to 30 years and shall be fined up to $250,000. Or you can resolve the situation by paying a fine of $300 right now by going to Walmart, getting a money pack, and putting the code in there, and then we'll give you all your stuff back. You can go back to your nefarious ways, So obviously this is not a legitimate thing. It's not from the Department of Justice. There's no chance that they would actually do that. If they were actually suspicious that you were like the leader of a child porn ring, chances are the FBI would be called and they would take you down with a SWAT team. So they're not going to lock down your computer. This is a hacker with intent to get $300 off of you with a money pack from Walmart or something. But there's other types of splash screen that they'll load on after they lock your files. This one, this one follows kind of the same trend as the majority of them, where there's just this big old threat that says your personal files are encrypted and you only have 96 hours to submit the payment. If you don't send the money within the time, all your files will be permanently encrypted and no one will be able to recover them. And in many cases, that's true. In many cases, if your files are encrypted, there is not a way to recover them. However, there are certain types of encryption that have been defeated by security experts. So it's always good to know what type of ransomware has locked your computer, and then we can run it against. There's a few websites that have information about how to unblock them. So basically, if you get hit with ransomware, let somebody in IT know so that we can run a check to see if we can unblock it. And if we can't unblock it, then we're basically just going to have to wipe it because there's nothing else to be done. Unless you absolutely want to try paying the ransom, which is not a guarantee that they're actually going to cooperate. In many cases, they do, but in some cases, they don't because they are criminals and they do criminal things. So, next one is a similar one. All your files have been locked. Hurry up or you'll be arrested. Send your money to thematrixhasyou9643@yahoo.com or something at yandex.ru, which is Russia. So yeah, totally legitimate that this is the FBI right here. Oh, and to pay the fine, you have to pay it through Bitcoin. You have to send them 2 Bitcoins typically, and that's like about $500. And here's the next one is another one that there we go. The next one is one that hit Dropbox, where there was like a self-unpacking Dropbox file that would lock you and your it would lock your computer and your Dropbox until you navigated to one of your personal pages and installed. Basically, you put the file in that one, so then it would use you to propagate itself through to your friends. So that's why not everything is a virus, because sometimes it doesn't have the ability to actually propagate itself. So now we're on to using the computer as a tool. We've got spamming, and spamming is the use of electronic messaging systems to send unsolicited messages, especially advertising, as well as sending messages repeatedly on the same site or in the same way. So, you know, like if you were in a chat room for some reason or whatever, and somebody's sending the same message over and over with the intent to block out any actual conversation from happening in the room, that would also be spamming. But typically we come into spam with emails. We get unsolicited advertisement emails, and most of that gets picked up by the junk filters. But if some unsolicited advertisements get through, mark them as spam, and it'll help the web filter figure out what kind of spam we're getting, and you know, try to work better at removing those particular types of spam. All right, what is phishing? It is not that. It is that. Phishing is the attempt to obtain sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, and credit card details, and by extension money, often for malicious reasons, by disguising as a trustworthy entity in an electronic communication. So this is basically where they're going to pose as something legitimate to try and get you to put your username and password into their hands. So right here we have an example of a phishing email. This was just sent to somebody, and we've got a number of red flags that are going to show us that this is not a legitimate email. And the first one, the one that you should always be on the lookout for, is the email address. The email address is often a big red flag because you can sometimes fake that, but not often, and usually it's not in their best interest to go through the effort of trying to fake an email address, because most people don't look very closely at email addresses. So right here, we've got a pretty good one here. management@maisoncanada.ca. If you're not looking very closely, it looks like it says Amazon. We've got a non-specific greeting. It just says "Dear Client." And we've got a threat again, there's always a threat because they want to make sure that you take a specific action. They want to entice you to click that link, and the best way to do that is by saying, we're going to delete your account if you don't do anything, or there was an intrusion on your account and you have to click this link to make sure that you retain your account. And then finally, there's the link that they want you to click, which if you hover over that link, it'll show you what the actual link is. You can never trust the text of a link to actually reflect what the link is. You want to hover your mouse cursor over that link so that it pops up and it shows you, okay, if you click this link, it's going to take you to this site. Well, if you hover over this particular one, it redirects you to http://redirect.kereskedj.com, which who knows what that is, but it certainly isn't Amazon. So a lot of different red flags to be on the lookout. We're going to see if you guys can spot. First, we need the header. The header, you already have a red flag, and I want to see if anyone can guess it.
It's not from Apple.
You're right, it's not from Apple. The important part to always look at when you're looking at an email address is the last part right here, the @blank.com. That is called the domain. And the domain tells you where the website is that the mail server is located on. So right here, this one, the domain is live.com, which is Microsoft free email accounts. Live.com was one of Microsoft's free email account names that you could get. The same is true for MSN.com, or there's a variety of different other ones. Gmail.com. You know, that's a free email service. Anyone can sign up for any of those. And since they're such large ones, it is difficult for them to catch when there's somebody sending out spam from them. Usually they shut down those accounts pretty quickly, but they still have to do something wrong before they'll shut down those accounts. So there's red flag number one. And unfortunately, our this was sent to, if I didn't say it, this was sent to us. This was sent to somebody in our building. And unfortunately, this person did not catch that warning sign, nor did they catch any of the warning signs in the email. Dear customer, we again have a non-specific greeting. Normally, you would expect that to be personalized with your username or your actual name. The vague threat. Here we have the warning of an intrusion, but it is worded a little bit odd. Your Apple ID was used to sign in from the App Store on a computer or device that hadn't been previously associated with it. If you made this sign in, you can disregard this email. It was only sent to alert you in case you did not make the purchase. So it mentions a purchase that hadn't been mentioned before, which is a little bit odd. And they actually do this on purpose. They want to make sure that they're only sending people through that link who are not really paying that close attention to what the actual contents of the email are. Because people who are conscious of what the email is saying, people who are paying very close attention will not be tricked by this. So it's kind of that self-policing sort of activity there. And so we have our login link, which is the final big, oh, that's right, the mouse isn't working for some reason. Our login link here actually has a redirect to bit.ly. And unfortunately, it's on the wrong screen. Oh, I got my mouse back. So when I click it, it's actually going to take me, because bit.ly redirects you, it'll take me to a different website. And I need to wait to let it load up. So here it is, https://www.appleid.apple.com.securedupdateWebApps.com. So again, if we're taking a look at the way the web works, is you have your .com or your .co.uk, and then what's right before it is the domain, which is the box that it's running on, the actual server. You know, that would be like the house that you're sitting in, or the file in the filing cabinet. And then everything before that is just something that is within that house or within that filing cabinet. They're all subfolders of a larger folder. So the actual domain here is not apple.com, it is securedupdateWebApps.com, which who knows what that is. I certainly know that it is a phisher, because at the time when he clicked this link, he saw a site that said that had the Apple Store login, basically identical to Apple's actual login stuff. And this person put their username and password in there and only stopped to think about it when they were asked to add their social security number, because that is not something that typically is asked about. So if you are asked, and you're not like trying to put that information in yourself, if you're asked to give that information to any company like that, that is a huge, huge red flag that you are doing something that could be very damaging to yourself in the future. So fortunately, this person did not go through with that particular section, but they had already compromised their Apple ID by putting in their username and password. And again, fortunately, this person was also using two-factor authentication, which requires that in order to sign in order to use the account, you have to receive your notification on your phone, or whatever two-factor authentication that service is using, before you can actually gain access and change the password. If this person had not been using two-factor authentication, it is possibly likely that the account would have been almost immediately taken over. They're very fast about taking people's accounts when you fall for a phishing attempt. So using two-factor authentication basically saved this person from losing their account. And now we're going to get onto spear phishing. So what is spear phishing? Well, spear phishing is basically phishing, except the person who is sending you the email knows who you are. They're trying to use social engineering to get your information because they know that you have something valuable and something that they want. This is also the kind of thing that can happen in education, because we do have personal data. There are specific individuals. Some of the specific individuals in this room would probably be likely targeted, and that'd be us, because we have like the most access to user information and student accounts. So it is something to note that spear phishing is basically the same thing. Just always be on your guard when you're being asked for information, and anytime that you get an email that asks you to like log in to something, definitely treat that with a lot of suspicion. And then finally, we have to talk about threats from within our own building. We have a little bit over 1,000 students, and we probably can't trust every single one of them is going to be honorable if they were to get any of our personal information, or if they were to get our password. So the thing is, there's probably a couple of people in this building who are still using that old trick of writing their password on a Post-it note and sticking it underneath their keyboard. If you do this, you should stop. Everyone knows that trick, and it will not keep your stuff safe. So the best way to make sure that everything is safe is to have a password and have it memorized. Have a good, solid password. And I've got some tips for that towards the end here. So, why should we be concerned about attacks from within? Because a teacher or a counselor or anybody in this building has access to, at least in some capacity, grades, student records, shared drives, email accounts, and all of those fall under FERPA. If you violate FERPA by allowing student data to become compromised, you do run the risk of temporary suspension of access, inability to perform your work, possible prosecution under criminal codes, dismissal or termination, or loss of federal funding to the institution as a whole if we have frequent offenses. So it does behoove us to be in our best interest to make sure that we're following good security protocol. So how do we protect ourselves from threats? First off, do not download or run unexpected attachments. If somebody sends you something and you're not expecting it, don't run it. Read links before you click. It doesn't take very long, and you'll be thankful that you did when you see a link that you should not have clicked. Be aware of which account you're signed into. It can be a FERPA violation if you put or if you put student data into your personal account. That does technically, chances are it probably won't get caught, but if you do it a lot and eventually, something happens, it's just not good. It is a FERPA violation. So be very mindful of that. When you leave your computer, lock it. Okay, and I know it's difficult to to want to do this. You're sitting, you've got a classroom full of students, you need to go out and get a drink of water. Still, you should be looking at your computer if you're going to be away, because in that intervening time, who knows what somebody could do. If you don't know how to lock your computer, you can hold down the Windows key and L, or you can just tap the power button. You just tap the power button once, it'll send it into sleep mode, and then you'll have to sign back in when you come back to your computer. And so that's just putting in your password. It'll keep your username unless you shut down the computer. And I'm not advising that everybody shut down their computer when they leave. I just say, lock your computer. Never share your passwords. There is not a good reason to share your password with anyone, including the tech department. We have the ability, we can change your password. If need be, we can set it to something completely different. But you should not be sharing your password with anyone. That's why when you go down and you have a password reset, Greg will make you type into that keyboard that's set up on the counter. That's so that we don't know your passwords. We're not supposed to know your passwords. Never keep default passwords. So anytime you have a device in your house, or anytime that you have a device that you're bringing onto the school network, if it has a password for accessing the functions within it, you should be changing those passwords. Use strong passwords, and I actually have a little thing that can show you how to get a strong password very easily. But let's just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and password are unacceptable. If you're using this, shame on you. It's just like leaving your password underneath your keyboard. It's not good form, and you will end up having someone just randomly access your account. So here's the comic that I came across that actually shows you how to get a really good password that you can remember quite easily. We were trained a while back that we have to have a password that looks like this. Well, those passwords are garbage because a computer can get through that in like 3 days.
The first one?
Yes, the first one. A computer can guess that by brute forcing it in about 3 days. But it's really hard to remember. So we picked 4 random common words. In this case, correct horse, battery, staple. That takes about 550 years at 1,000 guesses a second because there's so many different letters in there. There's 44 bits of entropy, as it says. So, because it is 4 random common words, you can remember it very easily because you've already memorized it. When you leave this room, you will be able to remember correct horse, battery, staple. You've got the mnemonic right there. You've got the horse saying, that's a battery staple, and somebody else saying, correct. You'll never forget this password. If you make similar passwords for yourself, you'll never forget them. And if you need to put like a special character or a number or a letter in there, just put them like in between a couple of the words. you know, it's really easy to remember. I started using this password method and I have not forgotten any of my passwords since I changed them. You're supposed to use different passwords for each account. This is difficult, but there are password managers that'll help you do that. So use a password manager. There's a free one called LastPass, or it's free to use on a computer. It's $12 a month if you want to use them with your computer and your phone. And I just eat more fruits and vegetables in here. But then update your software, and finally keep backups of your files in multiple places. Having one backup is like having no backups. If you have one backup, you don't have a backup. So have 2 backups, have 3 backups. And if you have a backup, don't leave it plugged into your computer, because if you get ransomware, that will also lock down everything that's on every drive that's connected to your computer. So to be perfectly safe, have one that is disconnected from your computer except for when you're backing up. And that is it. That is everything.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too.